Okay, Bezos Hashem Yisbarach. Amazing. We're on. So in we go to the Halachah B'S Yaakov. Continue here. Make them a little bigger, Bezos Hashem. Come on. Don't get better. Okay. Sorry about this. It might be time for a new computer, my gosh. All right. Meanwhile, Doreen, how are you? So good to see you. When are you coming home?
When am I coming home? Oh man. Soon.
Don't want to put you on the spot.
No, soon.
Yeah, do you have a plan?
I have like a idea in my mind, I guess. Maybe probably after the holidays.
Okay, B'ezrat Hashem. B'ezrat Hashem should be good. Okay, so here we go. We started yesterday learning this amazing Torah from the Beis Yaakov about Shemittah, where he was telling us, just to review for 2 minutes to the new people, that life as we have it right now, the depth of our makom in the world, the depth of our place in the world, of our connection to life itself. Spoke out yesterday how HaKadosh Baruch Hu kind of gives each individual a very profound existential space that they occupy, that no matter how deeply we share with each other, and we should share, but there's always some place that's just me. It's a Reshut HaYachid. It's just who I am, and it's a place of who you are. And Hashem gives each of us the deepest gift in the world. It's literally like the gift of your own individuality itself. But in this world, Hashem hides this from us. In the future, Hashem will show this to each one of us, their place, their true place, as makomo. Because right now in this world, Hashem has hidden this from us. He's hidden from humanity, from each one of us. He's hidden the sense of our deepest place, Hainu hachayim shelo, our life. What it means, the place of who you really are, means the depths of your life energy. The ikar hachayim hu mehatzadim, and our main life energy now comes from the sides. V'hainu mehispashtus midaisav. This means that when there's an overflow of our experiences from the inside or from the outside, with a little too much chesed or too much gevura, then we respond. And we learn how to respond, he says, this analogy like the captain of a ship. Kamo rav hachovel ha'olechi masfina, that's going with his ship. If he sees wind coming from the side, then they know how to rig the sails, man the east board, whatever they yell at each other, to go and pull the ropes and get everything so that you harness this excess energy and it doesn't flip the boat over, but propels it forward, right? And so too when it goes from the other side. This is not called a lasting salvation. It's not like the deepest depths. It's really just learning how to navigate and how to kind of manage the swells and the dips of the great ocean of life. And we're basically constantly in a mode of like responding to things. But each response is only for that moment. Rak lafi sha'ah. Kamochen ba'olam hazeh, so it is in this world. Hachayim shel ha'adam, the life of a person. Hu mehatzadim. It's coming to us like from the sides. I get to know who I am. I assert myself in this world as I respond to the different ups and downs, the different energies that are coming to me. Achen haruach chaim meHashem yisbarach zeh ne'ela me'eni ha'adam. But the spirit of life that comes directly from Hashem, that which is inherent to who I am, and not just responsive to different situations, whether from the inside, what's going on with me psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, or what's going on the outside in my life. And the two are always intertwined, of course, and the ups and the downs. But the essence of who I really am, the Ruach Chaim Hashem Yisbarach, that breath of life that is direct from God, that is who I am before any interaction with anything outside. Right? Zen ne'ela me'eni ha'adam. This is hidden from people. I once had a professor in college who mamish believed that there is no essence to a person. That all we are is our interactions. That's all we are. Mamish totally took this Torah that the Ishbitzer is telling us about living your life from the sides. You're living your life only based on how you respond. And so that's all there is. And he said they actually did studies of fetuses in the mother's belly, that they would read to the belly a Dr. Seuss story every night. And then after the baby was born, they could measure a difference between when they would read a Dr. Seuss story or a different type of story. The baby would recognize the authorship of Dr. Seuss. And then they could even measure a difference between Dr. Seuss stories and that one Dr. Seuss story that they always read to the fetus. And he was arguing to me that all we are is our interactions. All we are is our interactions. There's no essence. I felt this was completely ludicrous. I was amazed that a thinking person would really hold this way. But apparently nowadays this is a fad. This is a way of thinking, a strong way of thinking in the intellectual and the kind of academic world, that there's no essence to who we are. And the Ishbitzer, in a certain way, is corroborating this by telling us that this is mamish hidden from us. To really find who you are inherently, who you are before any interactions with anything on the outside, is very hard. As it really is hidden. And we're going to learn in the coming weeks how Shemittah year is a great, extremely special year in terms of getting in touch with our essence. Letting the land rest, letting the plant world not be an object of business, but just be a pure providing of sustenance. This is a very profound reflection of something that's going on spiritually for each one of us. We're going to learn about this and how this relates to the Yovel year every 50 years, which takes it to a much even deeper level of essential essence of that, being able to get in touch with the essence of who we really are. But nowadays, our life that we know, the way we can recognize ourselves is how we respond. And there is a certain revelation of who you are in the way that you respond. But it's not, like he said, it's not something that's called a Hatzalah. It's not something that's called a, how did he call it? It's not called a Hatzalah Kayemes. It's not called a lasting salvation, a lasting sense of connectivity. It's just, lightning in the night. Leibish responded, to something and did this and did that. And there are moments of where something comes out of me to relate to what's going on, and it is a revelation of sorts, but it's only from the sides, and it's not long lasting, and it's only in response to things on the outside. So the 6 years of relating to the whole plant world, the tree world, and manipulating it and using it in the marketplace. This is representing that time, which is most of life, where we are like captains of a ship and we're just kind of managing the swells and dips of the marketplace, the ups and downs of the seasons, and so on. And we're only responding, and we're profoundly out of touch, and it's so hidden, it's so deeply hidden from us, the essence of who we are. This is this verse that we started off with from Shmuel Navi, that Hashem says, I will one day make a place for my nation Israel. Makomo haroiloi. Each one of us is going to come to know their place. Mamish, the depths of their existential space of their individuality. The Eze Kavod Shamayim Hashem Yisbarach Rotzeh Mimanu. They're going to know just exactly what kind of honor of heaven does Hashem want from me. Right? Does Hashem want for me to be this very public kind of a person? Like, this is something like, for instance, that for me and my wife is always the issue. What does Hashem want? Does Hashem want us really being out there all the time and teaching and teaching? How much does He want us to have privacy with our family? Where's the balance? How does it work? What kind of Torah am I supposed to teach? Am I supposed to keep growing and growing and growing in my own understanding, or am I supposed to put my own learning on hold and be there for teaching others, and so on? I'm just speaking out like one small example from my life. But there's nowhere to figure that out. There's no way to like, no, here's exactly the way that your life can bring the honor of heaven into the world. We're groping our whole life for this, right? This is the main fear, so to speak, that we have in the world. Shema, maybe. Kol avodas she'ov Hashem Yisbarach, maybe everything I'm doing, Eino Iker Yesodo. Maybe I'm mamish spinning my wheels, I'm doing so much, but I'm missing the whole point. Like there's a story about Rav Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the Heilige Netziv, who was a Rosh Yeshiva in Volozhin. He was Rav Kook's Rosh Yeshiva. Rav Kook, that's all, by the way, his yortzeit is tonight. This is a special night, special day tomorrow. And you learn a little bit from him, read some of his poetry tonight, tomorrow. His Rosh Yeshiva, who recognized the specialness of Rav Kook, and even in a Litvische Rosh Yeshiva, in a Litvische yeshiva, which is a kind of a less spiritually expressive environment, the Rosh Yeshiva gave special dispensation to Rav Kook, even when he was a very young man, to wear his tefillin all day long, because he could tell that he was a very, very special soul. And this was, and when he said, I need to wear my tefillin, he said, okay. He wouldn't have said okay to everybody, but he could see something special about it. So there's a story about the Netziv that when he was a young boy, his parents, his family was actually very, very poor. And his father, I forgot, it was like maybe a shoemaker or something like this. And when it came time for them to make the decision around the age of 12 or 13, is he going to go from his Malamed on to being in a yeshiva, or is he going to go to work? That's what used to happen. He'd be 12, 13. Either you go to yeshiva and there's only a select few would go, or you join your family, become an earner for your family. And his Malamed came to argue with his parents, saying, please, you've got to send him to yeshiva. Your son is such a wonderful Torah learner. He could be such a treasure for Am Yisrael. And his parents were crying and saying, I know, but we really can't make ends meet. They can't afford to hire anyone to work for us. We need another pair of hands in the business. And the young boy is watching and hearing his parents crying. And that night, and he came down and told his Malamed, listen, I want to help my parents. This is what I need to do. And he he just said, I'm gonna work. It's okay. And he sent the Malamed home. And then that night, he had a dream that they were asking him, I believe it was a dream. I have to look up the story. I believe it was a dream. It could be that it was what his Malamed told him, or it was a dream. I don't remember right now. I think it was a dream. That he came up to Shemayim after 120 years, and they said to him, you were a wonderful tailor, you were honest in business, you learned as much Torah as you could, but really we were expecting two Sfarim or three Sfarim from you. And they showed him the books with their titles. And the next morning he woke up, he told his parents, you know what? I think I actually really better go to yeshiva. So I got to write these books. And he spoke to his Malamed, and they found a way, and the community came together to fundraise for the family, and they hired an older worker for them. And he went off to yeshiva and became the Netziv, and he wrote those Sfarim. He mamish wrote those Sfarim. The Hamik Dover, the Hamik Shaila. I think those are the two Sfarim. And so this is this crazy thing. You could go through your whole life and be, an observant Jew and be doing mitzvahs and not be doing sins, but miss the point. Mamish, it's a real fear. Ikar hayira, Shema kol avodas Hashem. Maybe all my service I'm doing for Hashem, Eino ikar yesodo. Maybe it's not the essence of the foundational reason for why my soul came down to this world. And what's going to come from building a whole beautiful building, im hayesod, if the foundation eno chazak, it's not strong, if it's not built on who I really am. And for this reason, Hashem promises us that He will bring us to the depths of the makom of who we really are. Right? So this pasuk from Shmuel Bet Perek Zayin, pasuk says, "V'samti makom lam Yisrael." I will give a place to my nation Israel, unetativ, and I will plant Am Yisrael in that place. V'shachen taktav, and they will. So I will plant them. Right. So he's saying, this is why the pasuk brings in a planting. Netativ to be planted in that space means not just I have a space, but I'm a conduit for a certain energy. When you're planted in the ground, you become the plant of the tree becomes a conduit, a flow of energy. That Hashem has taken His nation as His portion. Yaakov chevel nachalaso, that we are like the rope of His inheritance, that we're like a conduit, a rope of Hashem's energy into the world. Well, okay, we'll stop here and go into the halacha mode. Any questions or thoughts for that? This is mamish deep Torah.
Where's Tativ taken from? Is that Mishlei?
What's that?
Where's the word Tativ taken from that he's referencing?
It's the verse. It's Shmuel Bet Perek Zayin. I'm sorry I don't have the pasuk for you. I can get it for you tomorrow. Shmuel Bet Perek Zayin. Okay, actually, here, I'm going to just be telling you halachas now. Baruch Hashem, yesterday, the yeshiva opened a kollel in Beit Shemesh. I'm so excited about it. It's an amazing thing. And out of the blue, one of my friends is connected to the kollel. His brother flew in from America and happened to got this amazing the gates open for him to be able to enter Israel, which is not simple these days. And we threw together a fundraiser for the yeshiva, for the kollel last night here in Yerushalayim, and I was up till 2:30 in the morning. So I didn't get a chance to properly, then I had to teach this morning again, till now. So I didn't get a chance to properly take pictures and upload them. I'm going to read for you the halachas for today. So what about, yesterday we were learning about planting trees and how close to the Shemitah year you're allowed to plant. Today we're going to learn about harkava and havracha. So harkava means when you you cut off a branch or a piece of a tree, and then you cut on the side of a tree, and you're able to graft. I think in English it's called grafting. You have to graft the branch onto the tree. That's harkava. V'tochvimoto becharitz, into a kind of a ditch or an indent that you make into the tree or the trunk of the tree. And from then that branch that you now attached onto the trunk now grows, could produce fruits, could produce other branches and leaves. And then there's havracha. Havracha is when there's a branch that grows out of a tree, that's attached to a tree, you can plant that branch in the ground. And what will happen is that the branch will start to put out roots, and it'll put up a new trunk, and another tree or plant will grow. So if you cut there are also some types of trees like the sycamore tree where you can cut most of the tree. You can cut the trunk and most of the tree off, and it'll create a whole new trunk. It won't just stay as a stump. Some trees will stay as stumps, but shikma, the sycamore tree, and other types will put up a new trunk. So if you cut it within, very close to the ground, within 3 handbreadths of the ground, then it's considered to be beginning a whole new count for that tree. Like we said yesterday, that the issue of planting trees close to the Shemitah year is with the year that tree is going to be considered planted in. If you plant it within 30 days, then you don't have enough days of the 6th year for the 6th year to be considered that tree's first year, right? Each tree has its own counting, because each tree has, for its first 3 years of its existence, the fruits that it puts out are forbidden to eat. And in its 4th year of its own existence, you bring those fruits to Yerushalayim and eat them there. And in the 5th year, all the fruits become permitted. So each tree has its own clock. And those laws are called the laws of Orla. Then there's a cycle of the Shemitah cycle, where everything the whole Eretz Yisrael is either in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6, or 7th year Shemitah year. So when you plant a new tree just before Shemitah, if you don't have a full month of the 6th year, then year 1 is going to be Shemitah, even though you actually planted it in the 6th year. So the rabbis forbade doing that, because when people count back in the year that the fruit becomes permissible, they say, oh, that must mean you planted it. Wait a second, that means year 1 was Shemitah, which it is, but you didn't actually plant it in Shemitah, you planted it a few days before, which is officially permissible. But since it's going to look like you planted it in the Shemitah year, therefore, you cannot plant fruit-bearing trees not within 30 days, and then you have to even push back another 14 days to the 15th of Av, because it takes 14 days for the roots to start to emerge and for there to be what's called klita, like we spoke about yesterday, right? So what happens when I have an existing tree and I cut its trunk and now it's going to put up a new trunk? So if I cut it really close to the ground, I just reset its Orla clock. So year one starts from when it starts to grow, right? But I have the advantage that I don't need to wait the 2 weeks for the seeds and the roots to take root because the roots are all there, right? So I'll be allowed to cut off its trunk in order for it to start growing a new trunk up until the 29th of Av, because then I'll get 30 days of Elul of year 6, and its Orla year for its year 1 will be the 6th year of the Shemitah cycle. So everything's good, right? So you're allowed to, as long as you cut it down close to the ground, thereby resetting its Orla clock, you're fine to do it up until the 29th of Av. If you leave, it wasn't 3 tefachim. If you leave at least 10 centimeters, 1 tefach, which is about 10 centimeters, or more, that is still visible above the ground, then it doesn't reset the Orla clock. It keeps its old years. So this might be a tree that's already way more than 4 or 5 years old, maybe a 10-year-old tree, maybe a 20 or 50-year-old tree, who knows? It's going to produce a whole new trunk. And especially like sycamore trees, this is what they do. They every year or two, they cut its trunk and it produces a whole nother trunk, and this is how they make planks of wood from it. So long as you leave 10 centimeters or more visible above ground, it doesn't reset the clock for Orla. And therefore, you'll be allowed to do it right up until Rosh Hashanah. So that's the first halacha we're seeing. Any questions? Was that clear enough? I hope it's kind of at the, okay, Hashem. Okay, next halacha. What about laharkiv, like we said before, which is to graft on a branch onto an existing tree? Mutar laharkiv ad Rosh Hashanah. You're allowed to graft a branch onto a tree right up until Rosh Hashanah. V'chein mutar laharkiv al eit sheniktzat kodem l'avav o shenishar b'gizah. Yesh mishum mutar laharkiv rak ad tet zayin ve'elul. Some say, and this we saw before, that what about, we discussed yesterday, what about planting a non-fruit bearing tree where we do not have this issue of the Orla years because it's got no issues with fruits? It's not a fruit bearing tree. So until which day in Elul can I plant a non-fruit bearing tree? So we saw there was an argument about this. One opinion says you could plant it right up until the day before Rosh Hashanah. The other opinion says, no, since this tree is going to take 14 days to start to take root, for klita to happen, if I'm planting a sapling or if I'm planting a seed, it's going to take 14 days. The halacha considers it to take 14 days. When the sapling, as we said yesterday, when the sapling doesn't already have its old earth with it, if it's got a whole clod of earth on its whole network of roots, then it's considered connected to that earth, and you put it into a ditch, you're fine. You could do that right up until Rosh Hashanah. But if on a non-fruit bearing tree, but if it doesn't have that clod of earth, or if it's a seed, so there's opinion that you can only plant it, even though it's a non-fruit bearing tree, up until the 15th or 16th of Elul, so you'll give it 14 days to take root. Why? Because the Torah says the land has to rest. So if I plant a tree that is still doing klita, that's still connecting to the earth, and it finishes its connection to the earth after Rosh Hashanah, that's considered that I'm causing the earth to work on the Shemitah year. You hear that? Even though when I plant it such that it takes root before Rosh Hashanah, so the earth is still kind of, so to speak, working. It's still pumping in minerals and whatever into the roots of the tree. But that's not me doing it. That's just a continuation of a pre-existing state from before. But when I plant something new and I'm causing it to take root and connect to the earth in a new way, well, maybe I'm making the earth work on Shemitah if I plant it less than 14 days before Rosh Hashanah. And therefore, there's a strong side to be strict, and even non-fruit-bearing trees, flowers, or whatever you plant, to make sure to plant it only up until the 15th of Elul. So that gives it a good 14 days to fully take root before Rosh Hashanah begins. What about... okay, so now what we're doing is we're applying this also to havracha, to grafting a branch onto an existing tree, even though the tree has its whole network of roots. But by grafting the branch onto the tree, I'm creating the need for new energy to come into those roots that didn't exist before. And it's going to take 14 days again for that new energy to start to interface and for it to be able to collect that new energy from the earth. So there's a similar opinion here to be strict and to graft new branches onto existing trees only if you can leave 14 days for the connection to fully take root before Rosh Hashanah of the Shemitah year. Havracha, when we take the branch that is attached to a tree and plant it in the ground. Shenish'eres mechuberes lezaken v'nechas mimena muter lehavrich ad Rosh Hashanah. Again, we have the same two opinions. The Rambam says this straight out. You're allowed to do it right up until Rosh Hashanah, no problem. But again, there is the dissenting view that says, well, but wait a minute. It's going to take it 14 days to take root. And you're making the earth work for you in the Shemitah year. And this is something we looked at when we were learning the Mishnayos a few months, a month ago or so, that when the Torah says, V'shavta ha'aretz Shabbos Lashem, the Torah says the earth shall make a Shabbos for Hashem. Is that a mitzvah on my involvement with the earth? Or is it a mitzvah that I'm not allowed to even cause the earth itself to work? If it's the second side, then we would need to be strict in all of these cases that we mentioned, in terms of planting non-fruit-bearing trees, in terms of grafting a new branch onto a tree, and in terms of taking an existing branch and planting it in the ground. All those things need to be done leaving a full 14 days before Rosh Hashanah, so that once the Shemitah year comes in, there's a status quo that is unchanging. Whereas if you graft or plant a non-fruit-bearing tree, or take a branch and plant it in the ground, and you do it within 14 days, the new connection, the change in status quo will happen on the Shemitah year, and that might be called causing the earth to work. And so therefore, it's a good chumrah to do it 14 days before. With vegetables, by the way, the Chazal say that the seeds take less time, takes just 3 days. So if you're planting vegetables, leafy vegetables, beans, and the like, this for trees it takes 14 days. For vegetable, it takes 3 days. And so too, there'll be the same two dissenting opinions. Do you have to leave 3 full days before Rosh Hashanah, or could you plant right up until Rosh Hashanah? And from Rav Chaim Kanievsky's Sefer, it seems like that even though he writes that the Chazon Ish was lenient about this, Chazon, the great posek of the last generation from Bnei Brak in Israel, was lenient. He said, "Look, Shemitah is rabbinic, and we could be lenient, but you can sort of feel from the way Rav Chaim Kanievsky writes about it that he likes the stricter view, and it also resonates with me. I like the idea of not causing the earth to have a change in status quo on the Shemitah year. And so therefore, this is applying to havracha, to grafting, to planting an existing branch, and to planting non-fruit bearing trees. We always leaving the 14 days for the process to happen, for it to take root and connect before the Shemitah year begins. What happens if a person did not follow these rules? Avar v'nata or hirkiv or hivrich la'achar hazman hamuter chayiv la'akor. So what happens if I planted, and this is whether the person planted on the Shemitah year itself, which is obviously forbidden, or even if he planted the fruit-bearing tree, not giving it its 44 days or 45 days that it needs in order to take root and then have the 30 days of the 6th year. So the halacha is chayav la'akor. A person must uproot the tree. Person must uproot the tree. And Rav Elyashiv wrote that one does not need to worry about bal tashchis. Right? The Torah gives us a mitzvah not to uproot trees, generally speaking, particularly fruit-bearing trees. So here we have a funny situation. The rabbis say, don't plant the fruit-bearing trees too close to Shemitah year because people will count back on its year and think you planted on Shemitah, and so they forbade it. But then the person went ahead and did it, and so the rabbi said you have to uproot it. But wait a minute, I'm uprooting a fruit-bearing tree, and that's also a mitzvah in the Torah to not uproot fruit-bearing trees. So Rav Elyashiv wrote that kol she'oker machmas chashash iser ein chashash le'iser bal tashchis. That so long as you're doing this for the sake of observing the law and to avoid anything that's forbidden, that's not called being destructive. It's not called destroying the tree. It's called listening to the Torah. And the Rambam adds that even if the person who actually did this passed away, their son or their inheritor has to uproot the tree that was planted. Again, because this is not specific to a knas, a fine upon somebody having done something wrong, to just like a slap on the wrist to them personally. It's also because of that it's going to cause others who see those fruits becoming permitted in their 4th year and their 5th year, and they'll count back and think that the person planted on the Shemitah year. And the rabbis are worried about this. And so the uprooting is not just a personal issue. The uprooting is in order to not cause confusion about what you're allowed to do on the Shemitah year. So it needs to be uprooted even by the inheritors. Okay. Now we're going to move into a new area. We'll just introduce it for a few minutes. Just to end off with any questions. Everything is clear enough. Don't be shy. So we're now moving into Perek Bet, and tomorrow I'll have for you Bez Hashem pictures and we'll be able to see it inside.
I have a quick question.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
So can you say where what's the halakha from? Like the reason why we can't uproot a fruit-bearing tree? Where does that come from?
Yeah, so that's a verse. Actually, it's in this week's parsha, if I'm not mistaken. It's either this week or next week. That the Torah is talking about a situation where people are making what used to be in the wars. People used to make a siege on a city, and then they would take a tree and make like a battering ram to break down the doorway, the gate of the city, or in order to climb up over the walls or something like this. So the Torah says, don't cut down the fruit-bearing trees. Al tashchit, don't cut down those trees. And the rabbis learned from there that it's not just only talking about a situation of war, but it's talking about all times. And they derive from there further that you should not destroy, generally speaking, things that are of value and things that are it's a huge it's a big area in halacha. It can even apply to vessels. It's not only to the natural world. Al tashchis, don't destroy. Yeah. So we're going to move into tomorrow a new area. I'll just read out to you a little bit. The Torah says, "Uvashana Shvis, the 7th year, Shabbat Shabbaton Yela Aretz Shabbos Hashem, which would be a Shabbos to Hashem for the earth. Nimtzenu lemedim shebeshna Shemittah asur min haTorah. There are 4 things you're not allowed to do: planting and reaping. We spoke these out yesterday. Pruning grapevines and reaping the grapes, and we're also not allowed to plant trees, and we're also not allowed to plow the earth. And those are the Torah prohibitions that we spoke at yesterday. I can send you, by the way, a video of yesterday's shir. So, just to learn one halacha into this chapter is the prohibition against planting trees on Shemitah year. Up until now, we've been talking about before the Shemitah year. The prohibition of planting trees on the Shemitah year includes not just seeds of the tree, to plant a new tree from a seed, but also shesilas yichurim, planting a sapling, transferring a tree from one place to another, havarat etzim mimakom makom, harkava, like I said, grafting, and havracha, planting the branch of a tree. Not to do any of those things on the Shemitah year. This is a Torah prohibition, and we will continue on this tomorrow to get into the actual rules of what exactly are we not allowed to do with our fields and our orchards on the Shemitah year and our gardens. Yetz Hashem. Thank you so much for coming. Such a simcha to see you. Bruchim Abayim. And thank you. And such a simcha to learn and prepare for this amazing year that's coming.